Listen closely, because if you get this wrong, you'll chase her for months. But if you understand what I'm about to reveal in the next few seconds, something terrifying happens. Her silence will stop scaring you and start working for you. Every woman has a moment, the moment when she realizes a man isn't waiting on her anymore. And that moment changes everything. Most men panic when things go quiet. They feel the energy shift, the unanswered text, the delayed reply, the sudden distance. They assume they messed up. They assume she lost interest. They assume silence means rejection. But what nobody ever told you is this: silence is not the end. Silence is a stimulus. Silence is pressure. Silence is clarity. Silence is the one thing that forces a woman to confront her real feelings about you. Women don't overthink a man who's too available. They don't chase a man who fills every silence with reassurance. They don't crave a man who broadcasts his fear of losing her. But the moment you stop rushing to close the gap, the moment you stop trying to fix what she hasn't even admitted, that is the moment she starts feeling you in a way she didn't expect. Because here's the part almost no man understands. Your silence doesn't make her forget you. It makes her remember you. It forces her to ask questions she was avoiding. It forces her to sit inside her own uncertainty. It forces her to replay the conversations, the moments, the tension, the energy, without you feeding her attention like a constant drip. A woman's mind becomes most active when things feel unresolved, when she doesn't know where she stands, when she senses something shifted but can't quite name it, when she feels your presence by feeling the sudden absence of it. That's why silence, when used correctly, is powerful, not as a game, not as manipulation, not as punishment, but as self-respect expressed through stillness. Most men use silence from a place of fear. You will use it from a place of strength. When you stop talking just to fill space, she starts wondering what you're thinking. When you stop showing up instantly, she starts noticing she misses you. When you stop over-explaining yourself, she starts questioning her assumptions. When you stop chasing, she starts evaluating what she truly feels. A woman's attraction doesn't grow from certainty. It grows from curiosity, from space, from the unknown. Silence softens her defenses. Silence amplifies your value. Silence shifts the balance from her controlling the emotional tone to her sensing she could lose something real. But here's the twist. Silence only works when your energy is clean, not cold, not resentful, not angry, clean, calm, confident. When your silence comes from purpose, not punishment, she feels it. When your silence comes from growth, not guilt, she feels it. When your silence comes from self-worth, not wounded pride, she feels it. Women are intuitive. They can smell fear. They can feel insecurity. They can pick up emotional tension like radar picks up signals. But they can also sense when a man is grounded, when he's centered, unmoved, unbothered, even if he still cares. This is what pulls her closer. Not the silence itself, but the version of you that emerges inside that silence. The version that doesn't fold. The version that doesn't chase. The version that doesn't beg. The version that doesn't need her attention to feel strong. Silence is not about withholding love. It's holding your power. And when a man holds his power, a woman feels it, even when he says nothing at all. Before we go deeper, I want to ask you something. Has silence ever made a woman come back? Or has it always felt like losing her? Tell me in the comments, and if this already hit something inside you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. Silence becomes powerful the moment you realize you're not using it to get a reaction. You're using it to get clarity. And clarity is exactly what she feels when you stop handing her constant emotional access. Most men don't understand that women don't fall for the man who tries the hardest. They fall for the man whose presence they can't quite solve. That's why silence works on a deeper psychological level than chasing ever could. It puts a woman in a position where she has to feel the impact of who you were when you were present and who she becomes in the space you've left. She starts measuring the difference, and that measurement is what wakes her up. When you go silent with intention, the first thing she feels is confusion. She expects predictable behavior. She expects you to keep reaching out. She expects you to keep proving yourself. She expects emotional labor. But when that pattern stops, her nervous system does something automatic. It starts searching. Searching for what changed. Searching for what she missed. Searching for the emotional signal she used to rely on. Your silence disrupts the pattern, and disruption creates focus. The second thing she feels is curiosity. She wonders if you're busy, if you're upset, if you're moving on, if you've finally seen your own worth. She starts replaying her last message, her last tone, her last attitude, trying to figure out if she pushed you too far. Curiosity is the birthplace of attraction. When she can't predict you, she starts valuing you. When she can't read you, she becomes more attentive. When she doesn't know if she still has you, she begins to want you. The third thing she feels is concern. Not panic, not fear, concern. Women feel concern when the energy they rely on changes. Silence removes the comfort of your availability. It takes away the illusion that you will always be there no matter how little she invests. And that triggers her emotional accountability. She starts realizing her words mattered, her tone mattered, her effort mattered, because now she feels the absence of the man she thought she understood. And then comes the fourth stage, the most powerful one, reflection. Silence is the mirror she cannot avoid. When she doesn't hear from you, she hears from herself. Her mind fills the space you used to fill. She begins comparing you to other men. She begins remembering your strengths, the moments you showed up, the qualities she overlooked. She begins to feel the shift from, I can have him anytime, to, I might have already lost something important. Do you see the pattern? You're not forcing her to chase you. You're creating the psychological conditions that naturally make her reassess you. And the truth is, the man she reassesses grows in value. Women respect what they have to think about. They are drawn to what is not guaranteed. They become emotionally invested in what they cannot fully predict. But here's the secret piece most men miss. Silence only has power when your life stays in motion. If you're sitting there checking your phone, waiting for her to text, replaying her last message, wondering if she's online, your silence is not silence. It's hidden anxiety. And women can sense that in your behavior, your tone, your timing, your energy. Silence works only when you're genuinely grounded in your own growth. When you're reading, improving, building, living. When you are expanding as a man while she is busy wondering where your attention went. That is when she starts to feel the shift from control to craving. That is when she starts initiating. That is when silence becomes not a tactic, but a transformation. Every man has a moment where silence stops feeling like a risk and starts feeling like a standard. And that moment is when everything finally clicks. You realize that if a woman can disappear for days, reply when she feels like it, give you half attention, or keep you in emotional limbo, she is relying on one thing, your fear. The fear of losing her, the fear of being replaced, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of not being enough. Silence destroys that fear because it forces you to confront the truth. If her interest depends on your constant effort, she never truly wanted you in the first place. When you embrace silence, something inside you straightens, your shoulders relax, your breath deepens, your mind stops obsessing. You stop reacting to every notification like it's life or death. Instead, you begin returning to yourself. You reconnect with the parts of you that got neglected while you were overinvesting. You start remembering the man you were before you placed your worth in someone else's hands. Silence becomes your reset button, your way back to stability, strength, and emotional clarity. And the irony? This is the exact moment she feels the shift. Women are incredibly sensitive to changes in emotional energy. Even without words, without texts, without calls, she can feel the difference between a man who's waiting and a man who's choosing himself. She can sense when you're no longer emotionally anchored to her responses, when your world doesn't revolve around her presence, when your value no longer depends on whether she validates you. That shift is magnetic. It's almost primal. Women are drawn to men who stand firm in themselves, not men who orbit around them. Silence amplifies your masculinity because it forces you to rely on your internal world instead of external approval. You become harder to read, harder to predict, harder to take for granted. Not because you're playing a game, but because you're no longer giving away the emotional transparency she used to rely on. You stop narrating your feelings. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to prove you're worthy. You simply live, breathe, and move with quiet confidence. And here's the part most men never see. Women test unconsciously. They pull back slightly to see your reaction. They respond slower to see if you panic. They create distance to see if you chase, not because they want to manipulate you, but because they're trying to measure your emotional stability. Silence reveals everything. If you fall apart, she loses respect. If you stay steady, she feels drawn in. A woman's attraction deepens when she feels a man's emotional resilience. Silence is how you display it without trying. This is why silence is not punishment. It's presentation. It's the presentation of a man who refuses to beg for attention he deserves. A man who isn't afraid of losing someone who isn't afraid of losing him. A man who doesn't collapse under pressure. A man who understands that connection cannot be forced, only desired. Silence says, I want you, but I don't need you. That sentence, even when unspoken, changes the dynamic instantly. It shifts the balance of power back to neutral. Now she has to show up. Now she has to contribute. Now she has to communicate. Now she has to decide if she wants to be part of your life or watch another woman take her place. This is when she starts thinking more, feeling more, wondering more, because a man who doesn't chase is a man she cannot forget. There comes a point where silence stops being about her reaction and becomes about your evolution. This is where most men transform without even realizing it. When you pull your energy back, you begin seeing clearly what you ignored before. You start noticing how much effort you were carrying on your own, how many times you reached out first, how often you made excuses for her distance, how much of yourself you gave away hoping she'd give you a little bit more. Silence is the moment you finally recognize your own imbalance. And this is when the emotional rewiring happens. You begin valuing yourself. You start asking real questions. Why was I tolerating breadcrumbs? Why was I afraid to lose someone who wasn't afraid to lose me? Why was I investing more in her potential than she was investing in our connection? Silence exposes the truth, because without the noise, without the constant back and forth, without the emotional fog, you finally see her behavior for what it is, not what you wanted it to be. This clarity does something powerful. It resets your standards. You start expecting reciprocity, not perfection, just effort, just presence, just intention. And women feel this shift even if you don't say a single word. Your silence is not just distance. It's a recalibration of your value. She senses the difference in your responses, your pacing, your tone, your boundaries. And that subtle change triggers something primal inside her. The desire to resecure what she once assumed she already had. Women are drawn to value. They are drawn to strength. They are drawn to a man who is emotionally centered, not emotionally reactive. Silence shows her that your world is bigger than her, that your identity isn't tied to her moods, that you're not waiting at the edge of your phone to be chosen. Silence removes the pedestal and puts both feet back on solid ground. And when she feels that shift, her behavior changes. She starts initiating more. She starts sending longer messages. She becomes more attentive. She mirrors your energy. Why? Because silence makes her confront a truth she didn't expect. You are not replaceable, not because she can't find other men, but because she can't find another you. She realizes the stability you offered, the presence you brought, the emotional reliability she quietly depended on. But here's the twist. By the time she realizes it, you're no longer chasing the version of her you once idealized. You're evaluating now. You're observing. You're paying attention to effort instead of excuses. You're choosing based on reality, not hope. Silence gives you the emotional space to see whether she steps forward or disappears. And whatever she chooses tells you everything you need to know. If she comes closer, it's because she feels your value. If she stays distant, it's because she never deserved you. Either way, silence protects your heart. It filters out the wrong people. It attracts the right ones. And most importantly, it reminds you that your power as a man has never been in what you say. It has always been in how you carry yourself when you say nothing at all. Let me tell you something most men never hear. Silence is not a tactic to win a woman back. It's the doorway to becoming the man you were supposed to be all along. A man whose worth isn't determined by who stays or who leaves. A man whose emotional strength doesn't crumble when someone becomes distant. A man who doesn't chase validation because he finally understands that connection must be mutual or it's not connection at all. When you master silence, you stop acting from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough. And instead, you begin acting from truth. The truth of who you are, the truth of what you bring, the truth of what you deserve. Silence is where a man rebuilds his identity. It's where he steps out of the emotional chaos and into clarity. It's where he stops performing for attention and starts living with intention. This is the psychology women rarely talk about, but feel deeply. When a man is no longer emotionally dependent on a woman's presence, she suddenly becomes far more aware of his absence. She feels it not as distance, but as loss. Loss of your energy, loss of your support, loss of the emotional reliability she once took for granted. And this loss creates a natural desire to reconnect. But here's the real victory. By the time she feels the loss, you've already leveled up. Silence gives you the space to focus on your fitness, your finances, your purpose, your discipline, your mindset. When she finally looks back, she doesn't just see the man she knew, she sees the man she underestimated, the man she didn't think would grow, the man she assumed would always remain available. And that realization hits harder than any message you could ever send. Women chase certainty, but they crave mystery. They desire emotional safety, but they are drawn to emotional independence. They want love, but not from a man who abandons himself for them. Silence turns you into the man who knows his worth without having to announce it. The man she has to show up for, not the man who shows up regardless of how he's treated. And whether she comes back or not, you win. Because silence reveals the truth of people. If she returns with intention, communication, softness, and effort, you'll know she values you. If she stays silent, you'll know she never did. Silence doesn't break connections, it exposes them. It separates the ones who cared from the ones who only stayed while it was convenient. By now, you understand. Silence doesn't make her want you because you're unavailable. It makes her want you because in silence, you become undeniable. It makes her see what she couldn't see when your attention was constant. It makes her feel what she couldn't feel when your presence was guaranteed. It makes her respect you because you finally respected yourself. And that is the psychology of silence. Now, I have one question for you. Have you ever pulled back and watched her suddenly become more attentive? Or did your silence reveal something painful instead? Tell me in the comments. And if this message hit your chest and woke something up inside you, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with a man who needs to hear it today.